I'm here in Davos with Marc Benioff, CEO and chair and founder, of course, of Salesforce. Good to be with you in another country.
Great to see you, Emily. Aloha.
Aloha from the slopes.
You are the Kama'aina of Davos.
All right, so this is my first Davos.
Wow.
This is your 24th.
Right.
Davos.
What's it like being a nice Hawaiian girl here in Davos?
You know, it's chilly, but I'm liking the vibes.
Okay.
What's the mood this year? Are people anxious? Are they optimistic? Or are they confused about the future?
Well, it's an exciting moment. There's no question. This is just an unbelievable, amount of change. And I think when there's this much change and this much excitement, people are a little frenetic. And I think that, sometimes Davos is like a measurement of the economy. That's not what's going on. Well, is the economy good? Is it bad? How are people feeling about the economy? This is more like, well, what's happening exactly in the world? Because you have the AI situation, you have the political situation, you've got, these very broad shifts. And I think that is what's really happening here. There's a lot of discussion. And, Davos was built on the concept of a multi-stakeholder dialogue, the idea that we bring in lots of different kinds of people, political leaders, business leaders, spiritual leaders, cultural leaders, and have a conversation. And this year's Davos is about the spirit of dialogue, and that is playing out in spades.
Well, talking about that spirit, we're waiting for President Trump to arrive. You've said you want to see him prioritize U.S. businesses. What does that mean?
Well, I think the number one thing is, for the U.S. president is, as he is doing his job all over the world, he needs to support U.S. businesses and make them successful. And I was with Macron yesterday, and his job is to make French businesses successful. And there's no different. That's the role of the nation-state leader, is to help the people of their state. And so I have a lot of respect for President Trump and how he always supports the businesses of the United States.
So you're using Davos sort of as a live demo for some of Salesforce's new digital labor tools. I know you were prepping on Slackbot, but a lot of AI customers are saying...
You're not supposed to give away my secrets, Emily. That's not right.
I don't think that's too big a secret, but a lot of customers are saying they're sort of stuck in AI pilot purgatory.
Yeah.
Like they're not...
Yeah.
They're trying stuff, but it's just not working.
It's unfortunate because there's so much that you can do right now in AI. Unfortunately, there's so many false narratives. So I think because so many companies and pundits have said things that are not true, it kind of freezes certain customers and they don't know who to believe. So that's why, like we were talking just before we went on, that Ramon is here, the CEO of Pepsi, it's a new generation, and he just deployed 125,000 of his salespeople, 125,000, supporting millions of businesses, a lot of small and medium businesses all over the world who sell Pepsi, using new AI generation tools that we built for him. Really only took us a few months, and they're getting fantastic results. And that all started actually last year. I saw Ramon, and he once said, I'm ready to get a new level of efficacy in Pepsi. Another, Raj is here from FedEx, the CEO of FedEx. We just finished with him. He was a year ago saying, I've got trouble selling internationally. We identified all of his domestic customers that when they start to work with his salespeople, his website, and they haven't done international, now we surface them as an opportunity for international. It's generated hundreds of millions of dollars for FedEx. So there is great opportunities right now to deploy AI. And look, that's our job. Our job is to sell it, to convince, show the use cases, make people excited about it. And that's what we're doing here. We will meet with more than 500 CEOs one-on-one here.
You obviously have also taken on a sort of, a policy bent. You recently apologized for endorsing President Trump sending the National Guard to San Francisco. What did you learn from that moment, and how will you continue to reconcile the sort of Salesforce Ohana values with the administration's policies, whether it's ICE raids in Minneapolis or taking over Greenland?
That's such a great question. Emily, the way I look at it, and I think that this is probably the right way to look at it, is I've been doing this for 26 years now. Salesforce, amazingly, is 26 years old, 80,000 employees. We'll do more than $41 billion in revenue this year. Presidents are constantly changing, but our core values are not changing. And so we're just anchored down into our core values, and then we just speak to that and what we're trying to achieve as a business to reflect back into our customers and our communities what those values are. As you know, in San Francisco, where we are the largest tech company, there have been a lot of challenges. And so, yeah, I always have anxiety about safety for our employees. And, I think that anxiety just manifests into how can we create a greater San Francisco? And so I'm excited to be working with everyone from Mayor Lurie to President Trump to do that.
You're really focused on AI and especially its impact on teens, and you've been sort of raising the alarm about AI influencing teen suicides, which is, it's horrible that we even have to talk about this. You've called them suicide coaches. Like, what should companies be doing about this?
Well, I think we should talk about that we are dealing with a new kind of very unwieldy technology, which left by itself, these large language models, they can do all kinds of terrible things. I mean, they can do a lot of great things too. You've used them. They can summarize things, and you can ask them queries, and you can get information. But unfortunately, we saw this year this horrible example where this company, Character AI specifically, started to find that their product was turning into a suicide coach for their customers. And one of the most horrific things I've ever seen in technology is these children, died. And it was completely unnecessary. And I think it needs to be a wake-up call that, we're letting all of this AI technology out fully unregulated. And by the way, you remember, that's true what we did with social media as well. And you probably remember what I said in 2018 here, which was social media was becoming the same kind of very dangerous technology. And look, a lot of governments have made changes around social media now. So you go to a lot of countries, if you're not 17, 18 years old, you're not going to use social media. There are controls, there are protections. We need to get there with AI now. There doesn't need to be any more deaths. We need to be taking this seriously. And AI is great, it's incredible, but these models, they're inaccurate, they hallucinate, they're kind of hard to control.
So what should we do? I mean, should CEOs be held personally liable? I was talking to Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, and I asked, look, if we knew every company in every country would pause, should we pause AI so society and regulation can catch up? And he said, yes, he would be in favor of that. Would you be in favor of
Emily,
that?
number one, tech hates regulation. You know that they hate it, right? They get people on, it slows down innovation. They hate regulation, they hate it, they hate it, they hate it, except one regulation they love, Section 230, which basically says they're not held responsible or accountable for these deaths or for anything that their social media or their AI does. And that needs to change, because here at Bloomberg, if you say something, you're held accountable. And I own Time, and if we say something, we're held accountable. But these companies are not held accountable because of a very specific federal regulation called Section 230. It needs to be reshaped, reformed, basically restructured to really reflect social media and AI and the dangers that we see. And that is something that we should all be pushing for, that these companies need to be held accountable. And right now, they're not going to be held accountable because of this regulation. And
and what regulation is the right regulation? Like, California's tried to regulate. David Sachs has his own version. I know you just chatted with him. Is there any regulation you like?
I'm going to have a one-on-one conversation with David. He's a close friend of mine later today. I hope you tune in. And we're going to talk about that because, look, I think social media kind of is almost like a best practice that we can learn from, that if we look around the world, you'll see that a lot of countries, not necessarily ours, but a lot of countries have made really good changes. And we could make those changes too. Because, it's kind of funny. I'm like a large language model myself. I feel like I'm putting one word together. But I have context. I have a life. I was born. I have a childhood. I have friends. Hopefully you're one of them. And, I have a creator. I have a higher power that I'm connected to. These large language models, they're running by themselves. They were not born. They don't have a childhood. They don't have context. They're not connected to a creator. So that they're running kind of in a different way, and then all of a sudden it feels very familiar. It feels like, this is my friend. It's not your friend. So we need to step in now and look, we can kind of see where it's going. It's not completely out of control.
Right.
So now is the moment, and I think people like you and others should be aggressive about this.
Last quick question, and it feels almost trite going to the stock, but you're trying to build your company on this new emerging technology. Wall Street's really down on software. Wall Street's Salesforce stock is taking a beating, quickly. What needs to happen?
Well, I've been doing this for 26 years, and every now and then the software sector kind of falls out of favor. It doesn't mean our financials are out of favor. We'll do more than $41 billion in revenue this year, more than $15 billion in cash flow. Our margins are more than 34%, all record numbers, by the way. And we just introduced an amazing new version of Slack. You know, that was Slackbot, the new AI-enabled Slack that has the context and the AI built in. We have Agent Force helping our customers deliver customer agents, so we do employee agents and customer agents. We've rebuilt our architecture to have a data layer, an application layer, the Agent Force layer, and then these agents that sit on the top in the ecosystem. That's been a lot of work in the last 3 years, selling a lot of huge deals. But you know, you sometimes have to wait around for Wall Street to realize, whoa, this is a huge opportunity, and we're just going to keep executing it.
Yes or no? Are you at 1 billion yet? 1 billion agents?
I think we're beyond that. I haven't actually counted them all, but you know, here's a way to think about it. We now just passed, and I think we're number 1 or number 2 enterprise software company, or maybe software company overall, in the use of tokens. You know, tokens are what these models generate to generate their intelligence. We just passed 11.1 trillion tokens. And you remember we talked after our earnings, and we were about 3 trillion tokens. And that idea that as an enterprise software company, we're publicly reporting and talking about the number of tokens, and I know all of those people, you know, who love Bilbo Baggins are wondering if that's the tokens. It's a different tokens.
All right, Mark, next time we'll have to do this in Hawaii.
It would be
thank
warmer.
you. Yes,
I hope
thanks
you're
for,
okay.
I'm good. I'm surviving. Thank
Are
you
you?
for joining. It's a beautiful day.
I know.
Thank you for joining
all right.
us.
Next
here
time it's Waikiki
in Davos.
Beach. Let's do that.
Absolutely. Marc Benioff, CEO of Salesforce. Guys, I'll send it back to you.